So hello guys. For today's recording, what we're doing is we are going through the process of testing out multiple data scraping tools with a Claude code and see how their performances compare. The reason being that I tried first running data enrichment and data scraping with Exa within Claude Code, but the result that it gave me was outdated, and it was from 2024. So I just got thinking that there are multiple other tools. Why not try the other ones and compare which one actually fits my ICP, my sort of industry. So that was the goal behind this. So what we did was we started building out a experiment run that would allow me to compare each of these data scraping tools with Exa and in a standard benchmark. So here's what we did. We started off with giving it a prompt that I have tested the Exa MCP server for web scraping before. Now the goal is to test APIFY, BlitzAPI, SpiderCloud, and Bright Data to do intelligence research. Before I give you any prompts on what we need to build, I first need you to load each of these platforms' MCP servers so that I can call them one by simply calling them in my prompt. Tell me the best approach to do that. Should I provide you with the API documentation URL for each one of these, or should I just save the API token for each of these into the env file so you can access it from there, and that will do the job. So basically, you need to just iterate with Claude here, and it just tells me that go ahead and please create the env file. The mcp for these two is verified and confirmed, but you need to pull in the blitz api and SpiderCloud api documentation because their mcp is not available. So what we did was then that I have added the api token for SpiderCloud, APIFY, TAVILY, BlitzAPI, and Firecrawl into my .env file, so that all your APIs and tokens are stored in one place, and they cannot be accessed by Claude because if they are public, the data that Claude can access goes to Anthropic service. So if it's public, it can be misused. You don't want you to expose your tokens. So just keep that in the .env file. It got all the tokens. It just confirmed me the MCP server availability, and we can see that Blitz API and SpiderCloud does not have an MCP server. So what we have to do next is we have to provide the API documentation URL to load the Blitz API and SpiderCloud. We did all of that here. It renamed the variable names in the .env file, and as we move forward, you would see here what has happened. So it says that you can now invoke any of these just by asking me to use them in your prompts. What do you want to test first? Okay. So before we would move forward, I had to create a cloud.md file and save it everything over there because our context window was reaching its limit, and once that limit is reached, the Claude actually starts to hallucinate. So if you don't want Claude to hallucinate, you want the best of the outputs, and that happens when the context window has some breadth, right? So you save it, it creates a Claude.md file, and you put all your information so far right there. And then you go ahead and give it a prompt, like a detailed prompt that what you want it to do. It will be sort of a skill. So I went ahead and I gave this the prompt that I want to build an investigative research agent for sales prospecting. When I give it a company name, it should use the web scraping tool mentioned to it to search for the company and understand what they do. Secondly, find recent news such as funding rounds, product launches, major hires, partnerships, regional expansion news. And then third, identify the CEO, VP of engineering, VP of marketing, VP of sales, and so on. And then find public quotes, LinkedIn posts, or podcast appearances from that person. Five, generate a structured research brief with company overview, recent signals, target contact name and title, key quotes or insights from that person, and suggested outreach angle based on all of that above. Use Claude Code's own agentic abilities and the configured tools to do this. Do not build Python files or code because we don't want that. Before you build anything, tell me your plan. The last line is super important because you need Claude to share the plan with you before going ahead with building anything so that you're not wasting your precious token. Okay, So what it's now doing is that it started to plan. It named a skill that you can name your skill as prospect and just enter the company name, and it becomes your skill. This skill will have all these stuff fed into it, that you know what it has to do, all the instructions. So what it is, a Claude tool slash command, a markdown file with instructions that tells me how to orchestrate the MCP tools in sequence. No Python, no code, just a skill file. Okay, and it also tells me the location. Now, what it has done wrong is that it has used all of those tools and divided the usage of those tools into multiple steps. For example, it'll be using Firecrawl and TAVILY for company overview, TAVILY plus Exa for recent news. Now, the problem with the problem with that is it's super expensive to use multiple web scraping tools for a single web scraping job, and also it's counterintuitive, right? For example, I use Tavily, and Tavily brings me a certain data points, okay? But then I also use XR, which like 80% of the data is going to be similar, and it probably might surface 10 to 20% of additional new data points. But that will cost me a lot more in the longer run if you are going to be scaling this process. So it's going to be costing you a lot, so it's never recommended to follow the waterfall approach, just like you follow in email enrichment, because that's binary. If you find one email in Prosview, you don't go ahead and search that same email in find email, right? You just stop there. But here, if you go ahead and run Tably, you will find some data, but then you'll also want to be running a different web scraper to find some more information. So you're basically spending twice as much. So that's not recommended. What we want to do, in fact, is you want to use one specific tool to run all of these steps from company overview, news, persona identification, codes, and all. We want to do that with just one tool, so that we can, at the end compare which tool is best for what purposes. So regarding the tool, we are not going to use multiple tools under the same skill. Rather, create copy of the skill for each tool. For example, I should be able to call a skill that would run Firecrawl for all steps for any given company, or call Tavily to run for all steps for any given company. And regarding the persona, go ahead with auto selecting, but must be in the C suite. Okay. So it has now understood, and just for some reason it brought exa as well. So I asked it to remove it and only use the ones that are in the .env file. And now it's all C configured. It has APIFY, Firecrawl, TAVILY, BlitzAPI, and SpiderCloud, and it has now created skills for each of these. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna save all of this to the Claude.md file, and we you can see that it's going to create the prospect-tavily.md, which is going to be the skill actually that will call Tavily. And these are the instructions that it has provided this skill to have, and it will repeat the same for all of these different data scrapers. Once that is complete, we'll come down here to see what's API. Yeah. So you can see that all five skills are ready. There are five commands. So the five commands, three are MCP native, and then there are two for REST APIs. It also told me that on one honest note on Blitz API is that it's a B2B contact data platform, not a web scraper. It's likely to shine on step 3 but may not have data for new signals or public codes. The skill is written to call its endpoints and clearly flag where data isn't available, so you can get a clean comparison. So, okay, so we move ahead, and we save everything to the Claude MD. We exit the session so that we can start a new session with the fresh uh, uh, fresh context window, and also that you have to exit the session so that it can, when you start the session once again, it can load those skills again. For the purpose of this research, I used AI Arc as the subject company, and then now you can see here that we're calling um, the skill here. So it's called Prospect Dash Epify AI Arc, the company name, and it'll just go on. It's gonna go start all the research, find the data, gather the analysis, and finally gave me a brief. So you can see that this is a sales research brief on AI arc, dated 25th of April, tool used, and the company overview, recent signals, target contact, key code or insight. It has pulled the LinkedIn of the person as well, and then the outreach angle as well. Notes: no public funding rounds. AI Arc appears to be bootstrapped. The company page at this is a placeholder Google Sites page. The real site is this, which is correct. And this is good. This is good. Now, what we don't do is we don't want to save it on Claude.md, so we actually save it on a new file so that our Claude.md file does not grow too much because that will consume your context window every time you load it. So you create a research.csv file and save this information in that with relevant column names. You can see here I have created this is a project folder actually. So you can see that when I go back the actual project folder, it has now created the env. This is the cloud.md. This is the research csv, and this is the actual report that we're going to be getting out of it. But just for the sake of this video, let's just see what it has created in the research .csv file. So you can see here that it has divided the response into sections and fields and their respective values. Under the section of company overview, it has brought me all of this information about recent signals and target contact, key codes, and outreach angle. So this is how the research report looks like. Now, once that's done, what we're gonna do next is that we're gonna invoke the next one. We're gonna invoke prospect dash TAVILY. See, we have invoked prospect dash TAVILY skill and called AI arc again. And this time around, I think this data was much more in detailed and much more like quick as well, because I'm not sure if I could see in this response how much time it took, but the response was actually immediate. Like it was like done in within a minute or so, and it was much faster than APIFY. It ran pretty quickly, and the output that it brought me, you can see here, is that it brought some really unique points as well. Key things Tably surfaced that Apify missed. For example, Manifest 2024 awards, full verbatim Brian LinkedIn post with the Apollo ditching code and context. There's some of their stats, and then Pen Frank's third-party endorsement, customer proof that under stories, bounce rates under 1% and all. So all of these data points, Apify did not surface. So Tably was, good at that. We can do the same thing. We save that to the research.csv. We do the same thing with the SpiderCloud and in the other platforms. So as you can see that we are doing it for each of these, and side by side also keep saving your work. And yeah, we can ignore this part. Okay. I called Firecrawl, but I did not have the credits, so it just told me that you don't have enough credits. BlitzAPI also made the run, and it was good as well. It was good for actually getting the B2B data source, data information for actually the prospects, because the contact level data is pretty good in that. So that's about it. And then I was just checking how much context were consumed. So context usage I can see here, and I think this is pretty much it. Just then I asked it to finally bring about a comparison. So I want you to create. Okay, so now what we're doing is we are creating a new agent, or you can say a skill, that would actually compare the outputs of all the agents that we have run so far, including SuperCloud, TAVILY, BlitzAPI, Firecrawl, as well as APIFY. I want a complete comparison of that so that I can see which model worked best for what use cases, what purpose, and how do their outputs actually compare. For example, I saw that Amplify's output was not at the quality of TAVILY maybe, and similarly, Bits API had some other advantages it surfaced some new data points. So I want you to do that analysis, find the gaps, and create me a report that I can use to build a LinkedIn post out of it, showing the comparison between these four platforms and why it was necessary to be done. I want you to also include how many tokens were consumed by each of these agents and how many credits were consumed by using their MCP servers or their APIs. So the cost of that too, so that I can understand how much credits or costs were consumed to get this output done. Now, I there are some typos here, and the reason is that I used the my PC's built-in voice command input, so it basically picked up whatever I said, which was nice. Made the job pretty much faster. So as you can see, it created that agent. It gave it the format. It gave it the structure that it needed. Um, Structured the report, and then saved it as a skill, and actually brought the output as well. So yeah, I think that's done. And at the end, you can see the report that it generated, and it was saved as an MD file. Um, let's open this up. You can see now here there is a summary, ranking. TAVILY ranks the best, then APIFY, and so on. So then there is a breakdown by each tool: output completeness, data quality, credits, and costs. It's pretty much accurate, I would say. I think I checked it as well, and it was pretty accurate. Tably was pretty good. I think I really like Tably now, so I'll be using it pretty often. So yeah, I think this again towards the end, I would say that it really comes down to what you are using, which tool you are using, and what is the exact use case for that. Because not every tool is built for every use case. Blitz API is not built for web scraping. Blitz API is built to scrape data on people, on companies, but not to the extent that Tably and Amplify are made. So we need to be sure first of all what the use case is, what the business requirements are, and only then go ahead with selecting the tech stack which makes more sense to the use case, right? So hope this helps, and yeah, thank you.